and I love you very much. Why don't we run away together? He said, well, how can we do that? I don't have any money. He said, that's all right. I know where he keeps his money. I'll steal it all, and we'll go together. He said, okay, if you want to do that, that's good. Now, this man, he was a gigolo, right? He didn't really care for her personally, but because she was loose like that, he was taking advantage of it. And he didn't have much money either. He was a gigolo. You know, he would sleep and he'd smoke and spend time in the coffee house drinking and talking nonsense. So he said yes. So they set a date, and in the middle of the night, she stole all her husband's money, and she met him, and they embraced, and they started running through the forest. And they ran all night long together. It was very romantic. And they end up coming up to a big river, like the Ganges, and they have to cross the river. And she doesn't know how to swim. He said, don't worry. He said, you know how much I love you. Give me everything, and I'll cross the river, then I'll come back and get you. She said, what do you mean everything? He said, just give me everything, you know, your clothes, the money, everything. He said, why my clothes? He said, well, because when I take you to the other side, I don't want you to put on wet clothes. You might catch you go, oh, I love you so much. You're always thinking of me. See, that's the difference between my husband and you. You always think of every little detail for me. He said, of course, of course. So she takes her clothes off, gives him the money, right, and he swims across. And she's sitting there, you know, naked. You know, it's still a little nighttime, you know, but it's the end of the nighttime. She's sitting there naked, waiting for him. And, you know, the river's pretty big, you know, and she can't really see clearly because it's night. So then the sun comes up, she's still there, and he hasn't come back. And now she's feeling a little strange because she's naked. And all of a sudden, a dog walks by with a piece of meat in his mouth. And she's watching the dog. The dog's not interested in her. You know, he's walking along the bank of the river. And at one point, the dog is walking like this, you know. He has his meat in his mouth. He's going to eat it. And he notices his reflection in the water. And he thinks it's another dog with a piece of meat. And he goes, ruff! And when he goes, roof, he drops the meat from his mouth and falls into the river and goes away. And he's still barking, but there's no dog there. It was the reflection. So she's watching this, you know, and she said, wow, that's interesting. And then she thinks, oh my God, could that be me? So her boyfriend never came back, by the way. So she lost everything. And that is what happens when people are selfish, lusty, act whimsically, don't pay any attention to decency, rules, regulations for decent human behavior. They don't keep their vows in life. So what happens? They lose everything. And this lady lost everything, right? She found a bigger... See, what happens with cheaters is they always end up being cheated by a bigger cheater. An honest person, it's very hard to cheat them. I mean, like for example, here, years ago, one devotee came up to me and said, Prabhu, you want to make a lot of money for the temple, for Prabhupada, for Krishna? I said, well, maybe. I said, but what do you mean? How do we make more money? Well, you have all these Indians coming here, and they're all got nice jobs and nice cars. Why don't you get them all signed up on your downline for Amway? I said, what? What's Amway? Oh, it's this organization, and they sell, you know, household products, you know, cleaning products, and this product, and cosmetics, and everything. And you can sign them up, and they can also sign people up. And the more people they sign up, the more commissions you make. And all the money will come in here for Prabhupada, for Krishna, for the new temple, for Jagannath, for Ratha Yatra, for Sankirtan, for BBT books. I said, wait a minute. I said, I'm not sure if I heard you correctly. I've been here 16 years, doing programs every day, preaching, going to people's houses, cultivating them, trying to build up their trust that they lost because of the nonsense that went on here before. And after 16 years, you think that the goal is to sign people up on downlines for Amway products? I said, is that why we're preaching to these people? He said, yeah, but you'll make money for Prabhupada, for Krishna, for Chaitanya, for Radha. I said, no. I said, not only I'm not going to do it, I want you to leave for even suggesting such a thing to me. It's insulting that you would ever say such a thing. You think we've been here all these years to take advantage of these people? After years of trying to get their trust, and then we're going to rip them off? I said, get out of here. Just get out. I don't want to ever see your face again. You know. So this is the problem. You can cheat a cheater. It's hard to cheat an honest person, because an honest person can recognize when someone's trying to scam them. But a cheater, they thrive on scams, and therefore they're vulnerable to a bigger scammer than themselves. So therefore, this socham, becoming clean physically and mentally, is extremely important in order to become arjavam, honest, and simple, straightforward, no diplomacy. What you say is what you mean, not you say something means something else. And you stick to vows. That makes a person a person. When they take a vow and stick to it, that means they're a real person. You can predict what this person does now and in the future. It's not that they surprise you. They say, oh, I thought he was honest, but now he ran off with the money? Really? Him? I can't believe it. He was chanting Hare Krishna. Well, yeah, that's good that people chant Hare Krishna, but there's a difference between what they say and what's going on in here sometimes. So it takes a long time to be sure that there's a connection between what's going on in here and what they're saying and what they're doing. And that doesn't happen overnight. It takes a long time to be sure of a person that they are actually predictable. When one is completely predictable, then you can trust. But the most predictable is Krishna and our acharyas, like Prabhupada. We're all neophytes. We're trying to be devotees. Therefore, when people cooperate spiritually, it makes it easy for every individual, because they're in an atmosphere of cooperation, of good behavior, of honest people. And by this regular hearing and chanting, we come to a consensus of what this philosophy is about. We understand it in a collective way by regular hearing and chanting, which is extremely important. As it says in this verse, these verses in the 7th chapter, Shinvata Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridyantak Sto Hibadrani Vidunoti Srihitsatam. It says, to hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures, this is 7.1 in the purport, or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita is itself righteous activity. And for one who hears about Krishna, Lord Krishna, who is dwelling in everyone's heart, acts as a best-wishing friend and purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him. So this is actually the life of a devotee. Once Prabhupada said, this is the happiness in Krishna consciousness, sitting in a quiet, clean place with no other diversion of the mind, and being able to hear Bhagavad Gita with the purports of the acharyas, right? And then feeling self-satisfaction that, yes, I'm so lucky that I'm able to do this. This is my greatest fortune in life, that I can be hearing these things without any diversion of the mind, without any disturbance. And I can think about it deeply, because this is the only way I'm going to get out of this mess of birth, death, old age, and disease. It's the only way. There's no other way. I can't get out of it with money. I can't bribe my way out. There was once a man who was very clever. He was thinking, oh, Yamaraj is a Paka Brahmin, and Brahmins never touch stool. Therefore, he put human stool all over his body, thinking he would never die, because Yamaraj wouldn't touch him. You see how crazy people are? Completely mad. Of course, Yamaraj took his soul when the time came. Didn't matter, he had human stool all over him, and he didn't have to touch him physically to take his soul. So, we should not use all these phony, rational processes to think that we can outsmart Krishna or the devas or anyone. We only outsmart ourselves. So here is a very important verse that by this regular hearing, Nasta prayesu bhadresu nityam bhagavata seva bhagavati tamasloke bhaktir bhavati naistiki. In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge as he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam and from the devotees. He becomes fixed in devotional service of the Lord. So, Prabhupada recommended every morning and evening we should regularly hear Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, discuss it, think about it during the day, trying to assimilate 1 or 2 points that you hold on to for the rest of your life. That's Krishna consciousness. It's a constant process of self-realization. It's every day you're coming closer to Krishna by this regular hearing and chanting, taking prasadam, associating with devotees, and engaging in practical devotional service. Okay, so coming back to the verse today, we didn't finish the purport. 5th chapter, 16th verse in the purport. After passing through many, many births, when one is perfect in knowledge, he surrenders unto Krishna. Or when one attains Krishna consciousness, then everything is revealed to him, as everything is revealed by the sun in the daytime. The living entity is bewildered in so many ways. For instance, when he unceremoniously thinks himself God, he actually falls into the last snare of nescience or ignorance. If a living entity is God, then how can he become bewildered by nescience? Does God become bewildered by nescience? If so, then nescience or Satan is greater than God. Real knowledge can be obtained from a person who is in perfect Krishna consciousness. Therefore, one has to seek out such a bona fide spiritual master and under him learn what Krishna consciousness is. For Krishna consciousness will certainly drive away all nescience as the sun drives away darkness. So, we accept Srila Prabhupada as that perfect person, and there's no doubt about it. When I first joined this movement, I was thinking to myself, I'll look as hard as I can to find something wrong with Prabhupada. I can find a lot of things wrong with the devotees. In fact, I didn't like the devotees. I thought they were a bunch of goofballs. I was the goofball, but because I was just projecting myself onto them. But I was thinking, if I can find something wrong with Prabhupada, I can walk away with a clear consciousness. I won't regret walking away. I tried as hard as I could to find something wrong with the philosophy, with Prabhupada. I couldn't. And it got me upset because I couldn't walk away. Honestly. I could walk away dishonestly, but not honestly walk away without any regret. Until this day, I've never found anything wrong with anything Prabhupada has done or the philosophy. There's plenty of things wrong with the devotees, but not with the acharyas. And you have to think deeply about that. They are actually perfect persons because amanitvam, adamitvam, ahimsa shantir arjavam, acharya pasamam, socham, staryam atma vinigraha, indiyarte suvairagyam, anahankara evacha, janma mityu jaravyadi, dukadosana darshanam. Because of this, the 18 points of knowledge outlined in this 13th chapter, verses 8 to 12, they've gone through all of them. They've assimilated them. They know them perfectly. They're practicing them for years, for lifetimes. Therefore, they're perfected beings. Therefore, they're acharyas, teachers by example. So, it says here, therefore, one has to seek out such a bona fide spiritual master. So right now, we are associating with Prabhupada by hearing his purports and his translation of Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada said, the purports that I've written are my spiritual ecstasies. They're his deep realizations after many lifetimes of being a genuine, pure devotee. Practicing Krishna consciousness. So, if we can hear from Prabhupada, we're hearing from a perfect person. And if we want to become a preacher in Krishna consciousness, we should simply repeat what Prabhupada has said without changing it. Sometimes people say, oh, that's not original. Why can't you just speak on your own and give your own realization? Because we're imperfect. We make mistakes. We have a cheating propensity. Our senses are imperfect, and we're easily illusioned. So how can we give perfect knowledge? But we can repeat the words of a perfect, self-realized person like Prabhupada. And then our words have some meaning. Therefore, one has to seek out such a bona fide spiritual master and under him learn what Krishna consciousness is. For Krishna consciousness will certainly drive away all the nescience as the sun drives away darkness. Even though a person may be in full knowledge that he is not this body, but is transcendental to the body, he still may not be able to discriminate between the soul and the supersoul. So there are 3 levels of self-realization. First level is the realization I'm not this body. Second level is the realization that I'm a pure soul. And my soul is eternally the servant of God, who is the super soul in the body, witnessing everything I'm doing. So there's 2 souls in the body, my individual soul and Krishna, who's witnessing everything I do. And 3, the super soul is called Paramatma. And 3, Krishna is the controller of both, of the material energy, of all the jivas, individual souls like me, and of the Paramatma, which is simply an expansion of him, a plenary or partial plenary expansion. And he's the supreme controller of all. And this is why it says, Bahunam Janmanam Ante, Gyanavam Prapadyante, Vasudeva Sarvamiti, Samahatma Sudurlabha. After many, many lives of births and deaths, one may come to the conclusion, Vasudeva Sarvamiti. O Krishna, Vasudeva, meaning you're the son of Vasudeva, you are everything for me. Vasudeva Sarvamiti, you are everything for me. Samahatma Sudurlabha, such a person is a great Mahatma, because they've understood the finality of all knowledge, or in other words, Vedanta, Veda Anta. The finality of all knowledge is to understand that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There's no one equal or greater than him. Everyone is subordinate to him, and we're all his servants. And I should engage in the service of Krishna under the guidance of bona fide acharyas and spiritual master. So the acharyas, especially Srila Prabhupada, are our Shiksha gurus. Right now we're learning Shiksha, instruction, directly from Srila Prabhupada by reading his purports, which, as he said, were his spiritual ecstasies. So we're getting Shiksha from Prabhupada. A representative of God never claims that he is God, although he is paid all the respect ordinarily paid to God because he has knowledge of God. One has to learn the distinction between God and the living entity. Lord Shri Krishna therefore stated in the 2nd chapter 2:12 that every living being is individual and that the Lord is also an individual. Natvevaham jatu nasam natvam nemi janadipaha nachaivina bhavishyama sarvivayam atakparam. Krishna tells Arjuna, 2nd chapter 12th verse, there was never a time, Arjuna, that I did not exist, nor you, nor all these people arrayed on this battlefield, these 640 million people. The battle of Kurukshetra, 640 million people died. So that means there were more than that. There were more than that. And he says they're all eternal. They were never born. They never will die. They're individuals before they were born in this temporary body. They're individuals in this body. And there'll be individuals after those bodies are destroyed. Najayate mriyate vakadachin nayam bhutva bhavita vanabuya ajo nitya sasvatam yam purano nahanyate hanyamane sarire. The soul was never born, never came into being, will not come into being, is never and will never die. The soul is eternal. It was eternal before birth in this body, before appearing in the body. It will remain eternal even after leaving the body. Pasamsi janani yata vihaya navani grinanti naroparani tata sarinani Anyanti samyati navani dehi, that the soul is covered by temporary coverings, just like the body is covered by temporary clothing. And one is not bewildered by this. This verse, Vashamsi Janani Yata Vihaya, is very important. It's 2:22. As a person puts on new garments, giving up old ones, the soul similarly accepts new bodies, giving up the old and useless ones. So the change of body by the atomic individual soul is an accepted fact. Even the modern scientists do not believe in the existence of the soul, but at the same time cannot explain the source of energy from the heart. They have to accept continuous changes of the body, which appear from childhood to boyhood, and from boyhood to youth, and again from youth to old age. From old age, the change is transferred to another body. This has already been explained in the previous verse, 2:13. So how this is going on is mysterious. How the blood is being recharged when it comes through the heart and then goes out again to the lungs, that is a great mystery. It comes in blue, goes out red. How does that happen? See? And then it becomes blue again, it comes back, becomes red again. It gets surcharged every time it comes back through the heart. Why is it? Because your individual soul is there and Krishna is there. So we're able to live because Krishna revitalizes the blood. In the Bible it says that the soul is in the blood. Right? But actually, that's a little bit misleading. What's in the blood is oxygen and so forth, but Krishna is in the heart, and as the blood passes through the heart, it's revitalized by Krishna. Without Krishna, nothing gets done in this world. People think it's all matter, it's all chemicals, it's all chemical combination. No. Who is the combiner of the chemicals? Let's ask that question. Chemicals don't combine by themselves. And who is the source of the chemicals? Just like we produce sweat, we produce tears, we produce saliva, we produce urine, we produce stool, we produce blood, we produce wax, all these things, hair. So our body's a chemical factory. So who produced all the hydrogen and oxygen that's in the ocean? Such a huge quantity of chemicals. Well, we produce minute quantities of chemicals like sweat and saliva. But Krishna in his universal form, Virat Rupa, he produces incredible quantities of chemicals, and he's the mixer of them. He puts them together, and you end up with H2O, with an incredible amount of hydrogen, an incredible amount of oxygen. He puts them together in a special way, and it becomes water. When they're separate, they can be caustic. When they're put together, they give life. This is all mystery. How is it happening? It's not happening by accident. You can't put two caustic things together and make them life-supporting. Can you? Can you do that? I mean, how do you do it in the first place? So the mixer of the chemicals and the producer of the chemicals and the person that is enlivening our blood, that's Krishna. It's not all a stupid, accidental thing happening by fortuitous, serendipitous combinations of chemicals. No, that's nonsense. There's no such thing as fortuitous or serendipitous combination of chemicals. You have to have the chemist to mix the chemicals correctly so they come out. Okay, so, and we'll finish this purport. One can know God, however, even though a person may be in full conscious knowledge that he is not this body, but is transcendental to the body, he still may not be able to discriminate between the soul and the supersoul. However, he can know everything well if he cares to take shelter of the perfect, bona fide Krishna-conscious spiritual master. One can know God and one's relationship with God only when one actually meets a representative of God. A representative of God never claims that he is God, although he is paid all the respect ordinarily paid to God because he has the knowledge of God. One has to learn the distinction between God and the living entity. So the guru is not God. But Guru is paid the same respect that we do to Krishna because he's a representative. Just like the Viceroy of India was the representative of the King or Queen of England. And the Viceroy would go around to all the Maharajas and all important people, and they would give precious gifts, pearls and gold and all these things. And he would put it in a boat and send it to India. He wouldn't keep one thing for himself because he's only the representative. If he took something for himself, he would be taken out, he would be executed or whatever. So, in the same way, the Guru is simply the representative of Krishna. He doesn't take anything for himself. Whatever he receives, he offers to Krishna, and then it's distributed as Krishna's prasadam. If he takes even 1 farthing, 1 pence, 1 penny for himself, as Prabhupada says, he will go to hell. That's how strict things are in Krishna consciousness. So, one has to learn the distinction between God and a living entity. Lord Sri Krishna therefore stated in the 2nd chapter 2:12 that every living being is individual and that the Lord also is individual. They were all individuals in the past, they are individuals at present, and they will continue to be individuals in the future, even after liberation. At night we see everything as one in the darkness, but in the daytime when the sun is up, we see everything in its real identity. Identity with individuality and spiritual life is real knowledge. In other words, we all have an eternal individuality that never came into being and never will go out of being. We are eternal before birth, after death, in this body also. So, we have to deal with that. Because we're eternal, we have 2 choices in life. Either use our eternal soul with this temporary body, which is an instrument to satisfy desires. We can use it to satisfy the desires of Krishna, or we can use it to satisfy our own desires. If we satisfy our own desires, we get trapped by Maya. If we satisfy the desires of Krishna, we'll be completely happy. And we're not entrapped at all by Maya, by birth, death, old age, and disease. Therefore, by understanding Krishna consciousness, we can understand this verse, Janma Mityu Jara Vyadi, Dukkha Dosana Darshanam. We see the dosha, the fault, in the fact that we're suffering due to birth, old age, disease, and death. One must see a fault in it, otherwise they don't even try for self-realization. A person who sees that there's something wrong with this. Why am I getting old? Why am I getting sick? Why am I going to die? I don't want that. It's being forced on me. If it's forced on me, just like I force my kids, oh, you're grounded. No more cell phone. No more internet for 3 hours. No, Mommy, no, 3 hours is too long. Oh, just make it 2 minutes. 3 hours, I can't live without it. Well, whatever. But you ground them. It causes them a little pain. It's not to hurt them, because that thing, obsessively doing those things is bad for them. They're not going to do their homework. They'll associate with all kinds of nonsense people and whatever. So, if you do that, now you can understand why there's birth, death, old age, and disease. God is trying to give you a message. You're making a mistake. You've done major mistakes in your life, in previous lives, and in this life. And you're continuing it by thinking, oh, everything is TK. I'm going to go and drink some wine and champagne, and we'll take in a show, and this thing and that thing, and I'll put on a dress like Lindsay Lohan, so everyone will look at me. That's all nonsense. So, if we see a fault in this old age, disease, and that, then we start thinking, let me think about this again. There's something wrong. I got to get information from people who know, I'm not going to go to the local barber to learn to be a Carnatic singer. I'm not going to go to the grocer to learn how to do heart surgery, right? And I'm not going to go to some nonsense to learn about what the meaning of life is. I have to go to a bona fide person. Okay, so Therefore, identity with individuality and spiritual life is real knowledge. We have an eternal soul. We're eternally a person. Now, let me see how to attain the potential of this individuality. My potential is eternity, bliss, and knowledge with my individuality. Satchit Ananda Vigraha. That's my potential. My potential is not I'll live 40 years, 60 years, 80 years, I'll die of cancer, I'll have a heart attack, and then I take birth again, maybe as a dog, as a cockroach, as a rat, and I'll continue eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, and Janma Mrityu Jara, being born, getting old, getting sick, and dying. No, that's not the potential of the soul. That is ignorance. The potential of the soul is Satchit Ananda Vigraha, eternity, bliss, and knowledge with full individuality in relationship to the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. That's what our potential is. Okay, so let's stop there. And there's one thing I wanted to read also. This is from a wonderful book called Life Comes from Life. We don't come from dead chemicals. We come from other living beings, right? So, Prabhupada, in the 14th chapter, at the end, there's a section called Satisfied Animals. Because our senses are defective, the technological enlargements of our senses must also be defective, of course. This is a doctor named Wolf Rotke. Now another doctor named Dr. Singh, who's actually a devotee, my dear friend who died unfortunately, Bhakti Swarup Damodar Maharaj, says, the microscopes with which we detect things must also be defective. Srila Prabhupada. Material existence means defective existence. If you construct something with defective knowledge and imperfect senses, whatever you construct must be defective also. Dr. Singh, even if scientists devised a perfect microscope, they would still have to look through it with defective eyes. See, he's a devotee, right? He makes sense of everything he said. Srila Prabhupada, yes, that is right. Therefore, we conclude that whatever the scientists may say is defective, is full of mistakes. Dr. Singh, but they seem quite satisfied. Srila Prabhupada, the ass is also satisfied. The ass is satisfied to carry the load of the washerman. Everyone is satisfied, even the worm in the stool. That is nature's law. It is said that even the pauper, and now this is Dr. Wolf Rotke, it is said that even the pauper is proud of his penny. The pauper is proud of his penny. Srila Prabhupada, yes. In some parts of India, one may sometimes see a dog starving to death. But as soon as it gets a female dog, it is satisfied with having sex. Is that satisfaction? The dog is starving, but still it thinks it's satisfied with sex. What is it? So, unless we come in contact with a genuine devotee, we'll never be able to see things clearly because we keep getting diverted by temporary sense gratification. A little bit of sense gratification makes us accept a lot of suffering. So it's actually a trick by material nature. And unless we, but there's a higher standard of sense gratification called Krishna consciousness, pleasing one's senses with the mercy of Krishna by serving Krishna and then accepting his prasad. That's also sense gratification, but it's transcendentally engaging the senses in the service of Krishna and being satisfied with what Krishna gives us. So there's two things, never being satisfied or being satisfied. Which one is the disease? Never, in sense gratification, you're never satisfied. Just like a fire. You can feed the fire as much as you want, it's never satisfied. So lust is like that, it's never satisfied. The more you feed it, the more it wants. But by engaging the senses in Krishna's service, one becomes satisfied by virtue of the service itself and the knowledge revealed to us through sincere service and association with devotees. Then we become satisfied. Satisfied with little means you find a lot. Never satisfied means as much as you get, you're never satisfied. So which is better? Being satisfied with little and feeling as if you're being blessed all the time, or never being satisfied and being always frustrated. I want more, I want more, I want more. That's a disease. Okay, we'll stop right there. Are there any questions or comments or confessions that someone would like to make? No, I'm just joking. Yes.
When in the purified state of consciousness, when the devotee sees Krishna everywhere, is it because he sees everything as Krishna's energies and the capacity of engaging that object in Krishna's service, or actually he sees the material differently, like Matrix, the movie? Is it does the eyes really change, or is it the knowledge that changes the application?
No, what changes is like this. When we look at the sun on a cloudy day, we say, oh, the sun is covered. Now, is the sun covered? Is it? What do you say? No, it's not.
No, it's the clouds.
The clouds are covering our eyes. The sun's not. You go in an airplane, you go up above the clouds, you see the sun is shining. It's not covered. The clouds are covering our eyes. Right? So what happens is, when you become gradually more Krishna conscious, the covering is taken away. Krishna is there. We don't see him because our eyes are covered. Covered by what? Covered by lust, anger, greed, envy, madness, illusion. It's self-imposed ignorance. Because of that, we don't really see things properly. Just like we don't see the sun on a cloudy day. But the sun is there. You can't say it's covered. Our eyes are covered. So this is one thing we've been discussing day after day now. We don't really see things. We see very little of reality. And we have to accept that. Therefore, we go through a process of purifying ourselves. Our mind, our senses, this lust, this anger, this greed, the mode of passion, mode of ignorance. Then our eyes open up. Premanjana churita bhakti vilochanena santaksadesu hidayesu vilokayanti yam shama sundaram achintya gunaswarupam govindam madi purusham tamaham bhajami. When you apply the salve of love of God on your eyes, it melts away the cataract that's hindering us from seeing properly. We all have a cataract. Cataract doesn't mean your eye is defective. It means it's a covering that's blocking your eyes from seeing. It's something a little hardened that grows due to eating junk food and watching junk movies. Right.
So what we say in the initial Jnana Timiranda saying Jnananjana Shalakaya
Yes. Chakshur Unmilitam Yena.
We asked to remove the cataract with the help of the Guru Maharaj. That's what.
Yeah. So once the cataract is taken away, then you can see it. Krishna is in everything. Yeah. There's a very nice verse in the 6th chapter that explains this. It says, Yomam pasyati sarvatra. Sarvatra mai pasyati. 6th chapter, 30th verse. Yomam pasyati sarvatra sarvam cha mai pasyati. Tasyaham na pranasyati. Pranasyami sachame na pranasyati. For one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, I am never lost, nor is he ever lost to me. This is Krishna consciousness. That veil, that cataract is taken away by sincere service, and then we begin to see. A person in Krishna consciousness certainly sees Lord Krishna everywhere, and he sees everything in Krishna. Such a person may appear to see all separate manifestations of the material nature, but in each and every instance, he is conscious of Krishna, knowing that everything is a manifestation of Krishna's energy. Nothing can exist without Krishna, and Krishna is the Lord of everything. This is the basic principle of Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is a development of love of Krishna, a position transcendental even to material liberation. Love of Krishna comes after mukti. Pure devotional service comes after mukti. When all misconceptions are cleared, one becomes socham, clean, sati, pure, right? Chaste. Then one begins to see. As long as one is unchaste, unclean, they can't see properly. Okay? At this stage of Krishna consciousness, beyond self-realization, the devotee becomes one with Krishna in the sense that Krishna becomes everything for the devotee, and the devotee becomes full in loving Krishna. An intimate relationship between the Lord and the devotee exists. So, this is a question of love. When you love someone, you say, oh, anything I do is for you. Just tell me I'm your slave. It's like Romeo and Juliet. Or Antony and Cleopatra. Actually, those are bad examples, right? If you say Radha and Krishna, then it's getting much better. That's the top. Or Rukmini and Krishna, or Mother Yasoda and Krishna, or Mother Yasoda, Nanda Maharaj and Krishna. That's real love. When you love, you're ready to sacrifice everything for the person you love without asking anything in return. You see? So, this is a stage beyond self-realization. An intimate relationship between the Lord and the devotee then exists. In that state, Jai Shri Radha Nilamadhava Ki Jai. In that stage, living entity can never be annihilated, nor is the personality of Godhead ever out of the sight of the devotee. To merge in Krishna is spiritual annihilation. That's what the Mayavadis want to do. They're looking for, nirakar, you say, what do they say? Anyway, they want to merge into the existence of the Lord as Brahma Jyoti by denying their individuality and denying the individuality of Krishna. Therefore, the Brahma Jyoti is actually hell, because that's the only place where there's no devotional service. Prabhupada said it's already position of fallen, being fallen. It's not what the Mayavadis make it out to be. It's it's so wonderful, there is nothingness, there's no more ego. No more ego means no more you as a person. So there's no more bhakti, because bhakti requires two persons, the lover and the beloved, and service, relationship. To merge in Krishna is spiritual annihilation. A devotee takes no such risk. It is stated in the Brahma Samhita 538, I worship the primeval Lord Govinda, who is always seen by the devotee, whose eyes are anointed with the pulp of love. He is seen in his eternal form as Sham Sundara, situated within the heart of the devotee. At this stage, Lord Krishna never disappears from the sight of the devotee, nor does the devotee ever lose sight of the Lord. In the case of a yogi who sees the Lord as Paramatma within the heart, the same applies. Such a yogi turns into a pure devotee and cannot bear to live for a moment without seeing the Lord within himself. So, we clear away the cataract, the fog in the brain, the cloud that hinders us from seeing the actual light. Hiranmayana patrena satyasya piyatam mukham tattvam pusamapavrinu satya dharmaya dristaya. 15th mantra, the Ishopanishad says, oh my dear Lord, please take away this curtain of light, brilliant effulgence coming from your body, called the Brahma Jyoti, so I can see your beautiful smiling face. So if you look at the sunlight all the time, you'll go blind. So the devotee is not interested in merging into the oneness of God in the form of the Brahma Jyoti. He wants to see the smiling face of Krishna that's the origin of the Brahma Jyoti. But to do that, we have to take away two coverings. One is what's covering us, and the other is what's covering Krishna. That's his yogamaya potency. You have to, it's just like getting out of prison. If you've ever been, I don't know, I went into a prison, not because I was a prisoner, because I was a priest, right? It was hard to get in. Yeah, you have to go through so many locked doors and guards. Imagine how hard it is to get out, right? It's the same thing. We're locked in this material nature right now. To get out of this, we have to go through many, many doors of misconceptions. Each one of those misconceptions in the mind is a door with a lock on it, right? And we have to go through them before we can get liberated. And when you get liberated, that's not it. After liberation, devotional service begins. After liberation, after all those misconceptions go away, then devotional service begins. And you have a chance to attain real love after that. So therefore, amanitvam, adamitvam, ahimsa, shantir, arjavam, acharya pasamam, socham, staryam, atma vinirgraha, indiyarte suvairagyam, anhankara evacha, Janma mityu jaravyadi dukudosana darshanam. That clearing stage. We have to go through that clearing stage so we're able to see properly, and then we engage in pure devotional service. It can happen very quickly if you stay in the association of devotees, or it can take many lifetimes by doing a little bit of nonsense and a little bit of Krishna consciousness. So we'll stop right there. Thank you very much. All glories to Prabhupada. Yes.